What's up? I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dakota.
And this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast,
where we interview successful businessmen and women to let you in on why success doesn't have a single formula to follow.
We also have a little bourbon tasting along the way, because why not?
Why not?
So guys, please enjoy this episode and let us know your thoughts at Bourbon and Business Podcast on Instagram.
Coming to you from the Bourbon and Business Studio here at the AC Hotel in Ridgeland, Mississippi. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dakota.
And this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast. How you doing this morning, Dakota?
I looked at myself in the camera and I was like, why am I so much shorter than Tyler? And then I realized you were like, because you sitting up so properly.
Because you are shorter.
I'm 5'11" and a half and 3/4. I'm great, Tyler. How are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. You want to tell our listeners about this great view we have here at the AC Hotel?
The AC Hotel in Ridgeland, Mississippi is the premier hotel in the Jackson metro area. They've got breakfast, lunch, dinner. They've got a great staff here. Everybody's super friendly. They've got event spaces. They've got anything you could possibly need or want. They've got events. They have rooms for Mahjong. Your favorite game, Tyler. Trevor, you a Mahjong fan?
Big Mahjong guy.
That's what I'm talking about.
I don't even know how to pronounce the word, more or less know what it is.
We'll get there. Then I'll teach you how to play. I got to learn first. But yeah, man, the AC Hotel is the spot. If you're not here, then you're missing out.
And you want to introduce our guest to us this morning?
I do. Today we have special guest, Trevor Acy, founder of Delta Product Group. Trevor, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank y'all for having me.
Yep, glad to have you. And then what are we sipping on this morning?
This is Charles Goodnight. It's a Texas straight bourbon whiskey. And on the back it says, my great uncle was legendary Texas cattleman Charles Goodnight. What do you think?
I would not blame that on my grandfather. Not my favorite. I mean, it's got a burn to it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe my taste buds are bad and, maybe it's great. I'm sure there's some people out there like we talk about that will love it. But, I'm just got to be honest here. I'm going to give it a 4.8. Just not my favorate. But like I said, there's probably someone out there that would love it, but I do not. And, I could be an idiot. I mean,
what's the proof guess here?
100 proof.
115.
Yeah, it's got some burn to it, which you'll probably like that, but it's just not my favorite. So, and to all our guests, if you want to get a bottle of this, 4.8, you can go to Cheers Vineyard in Gluckstadt, Mississippi.
Try it for yourself. Go buy a bottle. Try it for yourself.
And like I said, you may love it. So don't go off my opinion. There's things that I like that, Dakota doesn't like, vice versa. So just giving my opinion on it. So, Trevor, we appreciate you coming on this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd like to just start this episode, tell our listeners where you're from and then how you got to the point of founding Delta Products Group.
Yeah, sure. I do think I should start with saying no affiliation to AC Hotel. It's just a nice coincidence on the last name. I am a Mississippi native, born and raised in the Delta out in Greenwood. Moved around a little bit, ended up graduating high school right down the road from the hotel at Madison Central. Went to Mississippi State and tried to get as far away as possible. Studied international business, and I made it all the way to New Orleans.
It's a port city.
Hey,
that's international.
It's culturally international for sure. I worked down there in project management, economic development for a few years, working on hurricane recovery after Katrina and Rita, and that's a great story for another day, I think. But then really picking up for Delta Product Group, we moved to Nashville. I spent 9 years in Nashville, first in digital marketing, and then moved into digital product management. We moved back home to Mississippi, like you do, about 2 years ago, and I started Delta Product Group shortly after that. I think coming up on about 1.5 years of having quit my full-time job and working on DPG and other ventures, trying to get involved here. But the thing that drove it is when I moved back here, it took me almost a year, probably more than a year, to find a job. Found out that product management isn't really like a known quantity. It isn't like a position that a lot of companies here are hiring for. And so I actually kind of moved back into marketing for a little bit and was working on strategy. But yeah, that's kind of what started. Is I just missed it. Is the short version.
So what does Delta Product Group? What do y'all do?
Yep. So really stuck on how do we advance product principles for businesses in Mississippi. There's like the mission side of it, which is kind of combines that economic development background and says, I have a belief that technology is an economic equalizer. I think the barriers to entry for starting a business, for building, scaling a product or service has been dramatically lowered with technology. But what I found moving back here, and these are some general statements, I know there's exceptions, is we still look at engineering and software development and that sort of thing as kind of an IT resource, a back of house support staff, or maybe even outsourced. So combined with not being able to find that position for myself, and then working with businesses here, we're still treating technology that way. Like, technology should be the driver of a business. If you are not a tech-based business, you're probably a tech-enabled business. But most of the companies, most of the businesses here aren't treating it that way, aren't thinking about that way, and therefore they're making some mistakes, and they're missing out on a lot of opportunities.
What can they do to capitalize on those opportunities? What have you seen is the most common mistake that a company out there listening to this could say? I didn't even know we needed to be doing that.
Yeah. I think the most common mistake.
Free Wi-Fi?
Exactly. Wi-Fi everywhere. It would be a help, honestly. No,
McDonald's did it and it worked.
It helps. It helps. No, I think the kind of the common pattern is a leadership team, a group, whoever decides, hey, we've got these goals, right? Like, we need to go, and it's usually increase revenue, drive sales, get more customers, whatever. And then they come up with a list of ideas. Maybe the leadership team does, maybe the team that's going to execute those ideas, they come up with the ideas. And ideas plus goals, it feels like a plan. Mm. So then they go straight into execution. Let's start working on these things that we came up with. And then when, invariably some of those things don't work, they don't know why. And it's that failure to learn, that failure of having a learning loop in place of that execution, that causes teams to, stall out. They don't know why these things aren't working. They don't have any other ideas. So then you get into like, well, we better double down, right? We better try harder. We better push through. We better, spend more money on the ads or whatever the thing is. And so it's that the failure itself isn't the problem. It's the failing to learn and the failure that creates this kind of vicious cycle.
Nice.
Well, tell us a little bit about, on that note there, I mean, you went from working for a company, you moved to Mississippi, you said, hey, I'm going to launch a business. What was that like for you?
It was tough, and it wasn't a quick decision. I had no aspirations to start my own business when we moved back here. Kind of two things happened in parallel. I was working in marketing strategy, and I had some folks reach out outside of the state asking if I did any product consulting work or contract work. So I took on a couple little side projects, and in a couple weeks, couple months, I got to where I was really looking forward to the nights and the weekends work. And, the day job was like, oh, I got to get through this so I can get back to this work that I love. And it wasn't bad. It was just like, I just missed working with engineers. I missed building things. It's a lot of fun. And then kind of at the same time, I started getting involved in the startup scene here. So I work with Innovate Mississippi and work on some of the accelerator programs and pitch competitions and that sort of stuff. And like I said, it was that moment of like, we're trying to build this muscle for people to start businesses. What I'm seeing in our current established businesses is kind of the lack of this mindset, this pattern of, how do we test and iterate into success instead of just guess and hope. And so, yeah, it got to the point where those contracts, we're asking for more time, asking for more input, and once it got close enough to replace the income, made the leap.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's you talked about your passion for it. You were working another job, and then you couldn't wait to get home to do that. And I think that that's such a key thing, especially for people that are wanting to go into business or business owner, or really your career in general. If number one, do not start a business if you don't have a passion for it. Because,
having a passion for money does not count.
No. And, but I say that, but also don't, sell yourself short. If you have a passion for something, I think it is very important to go after that, especially for your work, because you spend your time doing work more than anything. And, I mean, how sad is it you waste your whole life to do something that you absolutely hate? And so I think, even for our listeners out there, whatever you're passionate about, find a way to turn it into a career. Unless it's illegal, you probably should go see a counselor on that. But if it's legal, and you got a passion for it, I think that, a lot of times there's a market for it.
No doubt, dude. And I think there's also a generational thing there, right? There's a lot of the baby boomer generation who took a job because it was the thing to do. They took a job right out of college. They stayed there their entire life. They absolutely hate what they do now, but they're so high up in the business at this point, you can't stop because you're making money, you're supporting your family. And so you get caught in this trap. Gen Z, just now coming into the workforce, has seen that. And they're like, I absolutely do not want to do that because my parents did not like their job, or always talked about how much they hated it or whatever. And that's not the same for everybody. Kind of like you said earlier, there's exceptions out there to that rule, just as a group, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. But Gen Z has come in and they're completely flipping the script. And I would say even some millennials too, just saying, hey, I don't want that to happen. I want to follow my passion. I want to actually love what I do so that when I get to where I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, I can look back and say, wow, that was a great, great time. Yeah. And I just loved every second of work.
Well, and I think that speaks to employers too. What kind of culture are you creating? Are you creating a culture that people do enjoy being at work? I mean, work, it doesn't matter what you do. Even if you have a passion for the thing, the work part of it's still going to be tedious and hard.
There's always going to be something in the job that you're going to say, I don't like this.
But do you have a good culture? Do people want to be there? And I think that's really one of the key factors to if people are going to enjoy this or not. So, and what's been your experience like now that you're up and running, going out actually to market and getting your name out there and people finding you? How were you able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough. And I think one of the biggest lessons learned is, the actual service that I provide is now a part-time job, and business development becomes your full-time job. Like what you were talking about, right? that sales pipeline. And so it's exposure, things like this. Thank y'all once again for inviting me on. It's getting as involved in the relevant parts of the community that are adjacent to your space. So like I said, there's Innovate Mississippi is focused on tech and innovation in the state of Mississippi. And so I have just attached to that like a leech, I go to all the events. I volunteered. That actually led to a part-time position with Mississippi State. So I work part-time with the Center of Entrepreneurship out of, Hill State, out of a small office in Vicksburg, the M-City building down there. And then, it is, I do a lot of LinkedIn content and posting and expanding my network and meeting folks like y'all and always asking for that next level referral.
Well, you touched on an important thing we hear from, the most successful business owners, networking. You hear this all the time, your network is your net worth or whatever. And then I don't know that that's necessarily 100% true, but there is some truth to it. I think if you're in business, you're foolish to think if you're just going to sit in your office all day and people are going to come in there, that you've got to be out. People have to see you in the community, see you doing things. And that's really, how you do, I think, expand your business is just out in the community, networking as much as possible, all the events. And, the most successful people we've had come on here, that was their main thing that they've said.
I can say with 100% certainty, I've had one like straight up cold inbound opportunity, and every other piece of business I've gotten in the last year and a half has been through a mutual connection.
This idea, and I think it's just like ever increasing, and it's like controlling your narrative, right? And so other people are always going to have an opinion of you. And like you said, you're getting your LinkedIn going, you're getting your social media stuff going. That, in my mind, is a way to control how others view you, because you're giving them content that you want them to see, right? You're not just like going about your normal day and then people are like, well, that's Trevor, I'm not really sure what he does, blah, blah, blah. But you're telling people constantly, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is why I'm good at it, this is how I'm good at it, this is what we've done for people in the past. And then people start to associate you. They paint their own narrative of the content that you've given them, right? And that's why social media is such a powerful force. That's why getting out in the community is such a powerful force. They start to associate you with Habitat for Humanity, with Innovate Mississippi, with the food pantry, with everything. I'm not saying you.
I was say, I've never done anything. Habitat.
Man, you're a busy guy.
Just giving an example.
Thank you for giving me that accolade. But I think
Tyler's a huge proponent. I mean, it's a fantastic organization.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
I was just saying I've never done it. I didn't want to be taking credit for something I haven't done. they'd be like, we don't know that guy.
You're so honest, Tyler. I love it. See, honesty, that's the narrative Tyler is painting for people, right?
It's always good to be honest. So
But
it's good practice.
you know what I'm saying, though? Like, you've got to be so careful, too, at the same time of what you put out there.
Mhm.
Because whatever you put out there, people associate you with that thing, right? And so when you take a controversial take on something on social media, you just got to be careful, like, because this is your reputation now that's on the line.
Well, let's speak to that. You know, in your world, if there is a bad product launch, maybe it has a negative impact on the company, how are they able to turn that around? And I mean, obviously, you're not going to make that a positive, but be able to navigate through that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think you jokingly said earlier, but honesty. I think I mentioned earlier about like when something's not working, kind of the impulse and the pressure of the urgency is to double down on it. And it's like, well, let's make it work, right? I'm going to force this to work in the market. And like product market fit does not work like that. Ideally, you know, we can reduce the risk and not get to that stage. But if you find yourself at that stage, it is, you know, approaching it with 100% clarity and honesty and going like, okay, this thing failed. Let's call it. Let's not fall into that trap of sticking with something simply because we started it. Almost like you're talking about with the career. Like just because you made that decision, you can unmake it. And I've been a part of shutting down products and services that were failing, and it's tough and it's hard. But that's what good businesses, that's what good leaders do, is be able to call it when it's time to call it. You know, your people are your most valuable resource, and if you've got them pushing and struggling on this thing that is not working, not only is that thing not working, but you're burning those team members out. And I've seen a ton of really talented people go like, why am I being forced to try to make this thing work that's obviously not? And they will either, you know, lose confidence in that team and in that business and either check out mentally, or they'll actually leave.
Well, and I think so many times now you see, you know, people think that they can spin something, you know, especially with social media and the way you're able to do it. And like you said, people respect it a lot more if you just come out and be honest with them. I mean, everybody has failures. Everybody, you know, it's not a foreign concept that something may not work. And you just come out and tell the public, say, hey, this product we put out, it sucks. Like, just being honest with you. And we're gonna put something out. We're gonna fix it and do better. But I think that the public respects that, and they'll actually probably go buy that product because you are honest with them, versus if you do try to spin it and then, you know, half fix it or whatever and put it out. So I think that is a big deal.
Well, Trevor, you talked about reducing risk. Tell us some practical ways a business can reduce their risk. Yeah,
I mean, exactly what we're talking about is how do we not get to that point where we've invested a bunch of time, we've invested a bunch of money, and this thing doesn't work. So we said earlier how like you usually start with ideas and you just go right into execution. So the way to reduce that risk is to pause, not slow down. Business leaders hate that phrase of slowing down, but how do you pause and ask the question, okay, like, if these are ideas, what evidence do we have that they are the right ideas? How do we know they are solving the right problem? If you can't name the problem your customer is experiencing that this thing is supposed to be doing, you're probably already off on the wrong track. And so I've got kind of this 5-step process that I work companies through. It's got a cute little acronym, BUILD, of course, so it's easy to remember. But you've got to base it on the problem at hand. And that requires really getting to know your customers and going like, hey, does this show up? How often does this show up? How much of an issue is it, right? Like one of the big traps people fall into is they might have a good idea. It might work. It might actually even be a problem. But if people aren't willing to pay to have that problem solved, it's still not worth pursuing. And kind of back to the failed launches, when you start hearing phrases like, well, we just have to convince people that they, like, you're done. You are done in the water if anybody in your organization says they have to convince the customers to buy a thing. And so you're identifying like what are those riskiest pieces of this idea, and how do we quickly and cheaply test those kind of built-in assumptions about the idea instead of fully committing, fully building. And again, it's introducing that learning loop. Okay, that didn't work. Why did that not work? Let's talk to the customers again. And you can do that after a big failure, but ideally we're doing that as part of the build process and not just after the fact.
Hopefully you avoid that.
Right.
So, and you touched on a good business principle here that I want to explore a little bit more, talking about convincing the consumer. You know, you see, even in sales, you know, you see all these, I work in sales, you see these videos and people are like, you know, you can lead them down the road and sell them. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to convince anybody to do anything, especially with their money, that they don't want to do. Like, it's just not happening. And I think, you know, the way to solve that is either you put a good product out that people want, or you find somebody that needs your product. So I think, if you're listening to the gurus that say you can convince somebody of something, quit listening to them, because that is not a real thing. Just wanted to say that. I get on my soapbox. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
What are y'all's opinions on this? So there's all these people, and I'm sure you've seen it from posting on like LinkedIn and stuff. Ton of LinkedIn people out there that are like, hey, buy my 3-step course, this course, that course, especially in sales. What are y'all's takes on that? Like, I mean, in my mind, it's like, well, if you're selling a course, like you're probably not doing super well at that thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if I'm making a killing at selling real estate, my first thought isn't, well, let me teach other people how to take some of my market share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My opinion is they'd probably be selling whatever product they're trying to train you to sell, if they were actually good at it. I mean, I'm sure there's some good courses out there.
Yeah, no doubt. But
and,
there's so many. I'm like,
Yeah.
not all of these can just be fantastic.
No.
Yeah. My gut check in it, kind of to your point, is like, is that person known for that thing?
Yeah.
Or is the first time I've ever hearing about them is because they're selling the course, right?
Yeah.
Like I think there are people who have been really successful 10, 20 year careers at a thing. And they're like, hey, now I like to teach.
Yeah.
It gets a little muddy because like, I'm almost doing that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, here's my process. Let me help you work on this thing. I still love to build. I still do that hands-on fractional work. But it's not, I think anytime you get to like, here's the proven plan that if you just do this, it's going to work.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the big eye-opening things for me when I moved from marketing to product was like, it's not if you do these things, it's going to work. It's more of a mental model of like, we've got to ask these questions and answer these questions and figure out these
It's a
things.
process.
It's a
Yeah.
process. It's not
And what worked 10 years ago does not work today.
absolutely.
And so a lot of times when you're running into these courses, someone that was highly successful 10 years ago does not mean that their process is going to be successful today. I mean, you buy a sales course and they're like, well, the first thing you need to do is go and get the phone book. Call everybody the phone. Well,
That's what I got told when I first got into the financial industry.
where you get a phone book at?
They were like, go get some yellow pages somewhere. And I was like, are you kidding?
How about I get on Google?
Yeah.
So-
That's
But, I think that, you got to be aware of that kind of stuff. But overall, I mean, do some research, I think.
for sure.
Well, I think it's a good time for a bourbon break, Dakota.
Yeah, for sure. Charles Goodnight. I thought it was very stout, a decent burn to it, super weird flavor. I don't know what is going on today with the bourbons that we're tasting. I'm just not a big fan of any of them, I guess. But I'm going to say it has a bright taste. That's the word I'm going with here. Like it just hits your tongue and it's like, whoa, and then it just kind of leaves. I didn't really like it a ton though, so I'm going to go 6.5.
6.5.
Were you 4.8?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Well, tell our listeners if they're wanting to get in contact with you, maybe they have a product they're wanting to launch or a business they're wanting to start. What is the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, I mean, got a website, deltaproductgroup.com is a quick and easy way. Like I said, I'm real active on LinkedIn, so just look up Trevor A.C. There's not many of us out there. I'm usually the first response on that thing. And then I'm Trevor at deltaproductgroup.com if you want to shoot me an email.
Nice. And do you want us to give us your thoughts on the
Yeah, I'll happily share my ignorance. I took the first sip. I'm like, that's not bad. It's good. I do like a little bit of burn, so that doesn't bother me as much. I was
it's got the burn.
I was a Scotch drinker before I was a bourbon drinker, so I do like the burning peatier sides. But I agree with you on kind of the weird flavor. I'd probably be in that six range.
Okay. Well, we're going to land at a 6.0 for this one. And like I said, don't take our opinions because that's what they are, their opinions.
We are no one.
You may pick this bottle up, you may love it and give it a 10.0. So
I'm not going to lie. At the store, they said they've gotten a lot of good ratings on this.
okay, well, so there you go. So we're idiots.
I was excited to try it, and I was severely let down. But that's okay. Somebody out there loves this.
Yeah.
This is their favorite bourbon ever.
Yep. So some people give it a 10.
It is a cool bottle. I'll give them that. It got a nice longhorn on the front of it. It's very stout. It looks nice.
Yep. And to all our listeners, however you stream this podcast, if you give us a rating and follow us on social media, and we'll see you next week.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
If you have any feedback or would like to be featured, reach out to us at Bourbon and Business Podcast at gmail.com
or find us on Instagram at Bourbon and Business Podcast.
Thanks again for listening.
Follow us for more content and info on the next episode.